Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us to our Bold Conversations. My name is Neve and Leah was just spoke, and we are the co-chairs of Bold. And we have a committee of other parents who are like ourselves, parents who have kids in the school with IEPs, 504s. And we get together monthly. And we also, hold these talks, and we're hoping to do monthly Bold conversations. So if anybody has any ideas or any topics that they would like to hear about, please do contact Leah or myself. And through the school website, if you do a search under Bold, you will find our emails. And, like our conversation this evening, we're excited to have Alexandra Yagabi, and she is a parent with two kids, one kid who's now in college and a high schooler. So it's just so great that we can use ourselves as a resource and to tap into that network. Do you want to say hi, Alexandra?
Hi, I'm Alexandra.
Great. So let me start just by giving an introduction. Alexandra founded Healthy Mind, Healthy Family, and it is to help parents. And she combines research-backed tools and personal experiences to illustrate helpful ways to manage mental health disorders in families. And over the course of her 23 plus years herself in treatment and nearly 20 years of parenting children with similar disorders, she's developed a unique perspective on parenting and mental health. And her insight has enabled her family to thrive even during the COVID global pandemic. So she has a wonderful website, which we'll look at after, and it's has wonderful resources, Healthy Mind, Healthy Family. And she provides facts. Great website. She provides facts on disorders affecting her family, tools that have worked for them. And it's also a starting place for finding help. If you have questions like, where do I get started with my child or with yourself? She has those resources. Just to give you an idea of Alexandra's background, she is a tax attorney. Wow, Alexandra, I need you right now. She specializes in international banking industry. And during law school, she worked at the New York office of globally recognized accounting firm PricewaterhouseCoopers. She's also been living in Bronxville for the last 14 years, and she is the parent of a freshman in college and a freshman at the Bronxville High School. So Alexandra, welcome. You can take it from here.
Oh, well, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining this evening. And thank you, Leah and Neve, for having me tonight. I have to say you were all very brave to hop on yet another Zoom, and this time voluntarily. So who am I? Well, thank you for the introduction, Neve. My professional background is as an international tax attorney. And let's see if I've got this going. But my lived experience is as a patient and a parent of two teens who are also under a psychiatrist care. And my introduction to parenthood was bumpy, to say the least. Around the time my eldest was 18 months old, I began to see behaviors that I found incredibly concerning.
And is so valuable already. Yeah.
And around the time, so anyhow, around 18 months old, I'm sorry, someone was chatting in the background. If it at all you could mute, that'd be awesome.
Oops.
Okay, I'm not on mute anymore.
No.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'm just going to go back. When my eldest was about 18 months old, I saw very unusual behaviors that I found quite concerning. He would snap. become violent, just absolutely lose control of himself. And, as he got older, he really developed an incredible sense of remorse because he couldn't control himself. And by the time he was 5 years old, he was fixated on death, and he started to attempt self-harm. He tried to jump out of the window in our 30th floor apartment. He tried to cut himself with kitchen knives. And as you can imagine, this has a large impact on a marriage. So my husband and I were contemplating a divorce. We tried just many attempts and many months to find the right care for our son. And eventually we did. And that was the time our child and our family began to heal. That would not be the only bumpy period for, I would say, the next 12 years. We really dealt with a lot of things. So combined between my own mental health challenges, learning challenges, processing challenges, and my children's, I've had experience managing inattention, anxiety, depression, including bipolar depression, OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, disruptive mood regulation disorder, which is specific to children, and learning, processing, and fine motor challenges. So why am I here? My comfort zone's in the back office doing research kind of quietly by myself and writing. But I'm here because I know the fear, the pain, and the feelings of helplessness to watch my child struggle. And I know how challenging it is to find the right help. Now, I cannot single-handedly change our health insurance system, nor can I single-handedly fix the shortage of competent child and adolescent psychiatrists and psychologists. But if there is one thing that I have learned over all of these years, it's to focus on what I can control. So what I can do right now is provide a lifeline to parents by sharing my experience and research-backed tools that worked for me and my family. This is not medical advice or professional psychological advice, but what I hope is that any parent out there who is struggling can see that my family and I found the right tools and the right help, and you can too. So tonight, what are we going to learn? We are going to learn the difference between stress and anxiety. We're also going to see the trends over the past roughly 20 years of anxiety and depression in youth. We will see that the current crisis actually is not new. We will also have an introduction to some tools that parents can use to help build resilience in their children. One of them I call Lean In, and that's basically how I believe it's helpful for parents to get comfortable with discomfort. And another skill that I think is helpful for parents is to be able to acknowledge to our children that we understand they're struggling. Now, these tools that I call Lean In and Acknowledge actually have technical names called radical acceptance and validation. And they're modules, if you will, or tenets of a type of talk therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. So stress, what is it? It is an automatic physical response to a perceived threat that prepares our bodies to either fight or take flight. We become more alert, our heart rate increases, the blood flow to our muscles increases. And in the short term, this is pretty good stuff. What can it do? It can help us prepare for an exam. It could save your life from getting hit by an oncoming car. And recent research shows that it can promote neurogenesis, and that is the growth and development of the connections in our brains. And it can also strengthen immunity, but short term means minutes and hours. What is anxiety? Anxiety is chronic stress. That's not stress that lasts weeks and months and years. Now, when should a parent seek help for themselves or their child? Well, when symptoms are severe and they interfere with daily activities or make getting through the day a struggle. Some examples of anxiety are constant worries or concerns about the well-being of family or school, friends, activities, or repetitive, unwanted thoughts known as obsessions, or actions known as compulsions, or extreme fears of embarrassment or making mistakes. But there is effective treatment for anxiety. And this includes therapy, medication, or a combination of both. So my first experience seeking psychiatric care was when I was in law school. I was a second year and I was a wreck. I was constantly anxious, shaking. I couldn't focus. My heart was racing. I couldn't sleep. And basically, I wasn't functioning that well. Now, for me, I think it's also important that you understand for my entire academic life, I had to work much harder than my peers. And as a child, I know I had a language-based learning disability. So from then on, I just figured I really wasn't that smart. And I remember my first visit. I sat across from my psychiatrist, and I felt like a failure. I felt vulnerable, exposed, judged, deficient as a person, and quite frankly, ashamed. So I rationalized this. I thought, this is temporary. I'm a second-year law student. Who wouldn't be stressed? Well, I started medication and it worked well for me. I felt grounded. I could learn. I would be 40 years old before I received an official diagnosis that I was also working against, processing challenges, and inattention. And until that time, I always told myself, I have to be better than this. So, under my doctor's care, I tried several times to taper off my medication. And I feel that this is important to share with you, because still today, there is such a misunderstanding surrounding medication and mental health and stigma around both. So I feel that wearing glasses is really no different than taking medication. I wear my glasses to function, not to cheat, and not to get some type of high. And over the years, I found that certain medications have enabled me to get to a place physiologically where I could do the tough internal work that helps me objectively look at my thoughts and behaviors so that I could change them. Because remember, stress and anxiety, but stress is a physical response to a perceived threat that puts us in a mode to prepare to fight or take flight. That's not an ideal time to sit back and reflect and do tough internal work. So eventually, I decided I didn't need to suffer, nor did I need to cause those around me to suffer. So I chose to function at my best because I functioned better and was a better parent when my medication was well managed. To be clear, I am not suggesting that medication is for everybody. It is a decision. Trying medication is a decision between you and your psychiatrist or your child's psychiatrist. So let's look at some data. This chart represents anxiety and depression trends, basically, for youth. Youth is defined as 12 to 17-year-olds. And you can see that 2016, prior to COVID, it all increased, anxiety and depression, and then kind of went on steroids during the pandemic. And this chart shows the trends in youth depression. And the reason why I am showing this is that as of now and so far, the best data available for this age group happens to be on depression. And this information comes from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So really, it's quite interesting. It existed 2004. By the time we hit 2012, it was really rising. And it basically continued its ascent right on through 2020. And to further this point, in 2018, the Journal of Abnormal Psychology published a World Health Organization study led by Columbia that looked at freshmen or first-year university students in 19 universities across 8 countries. They found that in this cohort, 33% had one of 6 common mental health disorders: major depression, mania or hypomania, anxiety, panic disorder, alcohol use disorder, or other substance use disorders. Of these 6, depression represents 20% and anxiety 17%. Are we surprised? Well, let's take a look at the 21st century's kickoff. We began witnessing rapid changes and disruptions globally. Climate, economies, immigration, urbanization. As a matter of fact, the US population alone has increased by 1/3 since the year I was born. And this has broad implications, especially on education and employment. So as a Gen Xer myself, I looked at my parents and I saw, oh, well, a degree equals security. So my path was pretty straight and clear. Well, the only certainty for our children's future is change. And I think it's very helpful for parents to acknowledge to ourselves that we don't have all of the answers. And some recent research, which I believe we've all experienced the results ourselves living in the pandemic, is that the research shows that uncertainty causes us more stress than knowing a certain bad outcome. So how can we help our children become adaptable and agile in a world of rapid change and uncertainty? And I believe that the study of resilience may hold some clues. One of the major factors in resilience is previous exposure to hardship or trauma. And well, we are all living through the COVID pandemic. So to greater or lesser degrees, we are all experiencing discomfort. And I think a good analogy to prior exposure, and a timely one, is the COVID vaccine. Well, how do vaccines work? Well, there is an attenuated pathogen that is introduced to our bodies, and it primes our immune system to produce protection against future exposure. In the short term, we don't feel so great, but our body is now stronger. So I believe that our role in fostering resilience in our children is to empower our children through exposure and practice. Because we can help them build tolerance to discomfort by working through their challenges in positive and supportive ways, so that this prior experience will have built skills and confidence in them to navigate future challenges. And there's great news, because recent research has shown that parents can play a powerful role in helping children navigate anxiety when they change their own behaviors. And I have witnessed this firsthand. So I believe the best place for parents to start is with ourselves, and take a close look at our own biases, perceptions, reactions, both emotionally and behaviorally. Because when we objectively see ourselves and accept the facts in our lives as they are, and all of the emotions surrounding them, then we can begin to recalibrate our behaviors to achieve a more positive outcome. And this skill is one of the tenets of DBT, and it's called radical acceptance. Because I believe that when we can sit with our own discomfort, we can better sit with our child's discomfort. And keep in mind, as parents, we are always modeling behavior for our children. Several years back, one of my children was in middle school and really struggling with upsetting thoughts, the obsessions of OCD. And things started out with tummy aches, not wanting to go to school. And I would get texts during the day, always around lunchtime. Mom, I'm really sad. I miss you. Can I come home? And I would say, no, you can't come home. I know you are fine. You'll be home in a few hours. I love you. Day after day, the text just kept rolling in, and I am getting pretty tired of the drill. Then it occurs to me that by my providing the reassurance in the form of replying to the text, what I was really doing was fostering my child's dependence on me for reassurance. So I had an idea. And the next day, before my child left for school, I said, I know you are having a really, really hard time right now with your upsetting thoughts. But my job is to make sure that you grow into the strong, capable person that I know you are. I need to get a lot of work done today. So I'm going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb. But in an emergency, the school can always reach me. So when you do have some upsetting thoughts, try to put them aside just for a little while. You can come back to them later this afternoon. I know you can handle this. So what did I do and why did this help? Well, number one, I had a clear plan and I discussed it with my child ahead of time, not in a moment of crisis, if you will. The second was that I acknowledged to my child that I knew they were struggling. And then I stopped there. I didn't give my opinion as to what I thought about this struggle or judge them for having this struggle. I simply acknowledged it. And this is called validation in DBT. And next, I showed confidence. I showed my child that I was strong enough to handle their big feelings, and I had confidence in them. I felt they could handle it, either today or sometime in the future. So to be clear, this is one example that worked for us with practice. It does not mean that my child suddenly overcame anxiety or OCD. It does mean they mastered one tool to manage anxiety without being dependent upon me. And interestingly, this did have a broader positive impact outside of the school day. So if any of you would like to practice, write down a scenario in your lives where you are involved in a struggle that your child has with anxiety. And write down how you could respond that shows your child, shows your child that you understand they're struggling. You don't give your opinion on it. You just let them know, they're having a hard time, and that you believe they can handle it. You have confidence, and pick a time to present your plan when it is not a moment of crisis. Remember, we can only control our behaviors and our reactions. We cannot control our child's. I recommend always starting small and take one step at a time. And one thing that I feel strongly about being a parent and managing what I've managed is parents should trust their instincts, because you do know your children. And like so many other things in life, managing mental health challenges is never as smooth as we'd like. So let's remember to be gentle with ourselves. Our children are learning, but we're learning too. And we are all in this together. And you have wonderful, wonderful resources in bold under the stewardship of Leah and Neve. So I'd like to end on a fitting quote. Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. So thank you all for joining this evening.
Alexandra, thank you so much. That was so great. And
Thank you.
You could dissect each part of that. So if anyone wants to raise their hand, ask a question, comment, we'd love to hear from you. So let us know.
Let's see.
I can see a raised hand.
Oops, I apologize. I'm having a little hard time driving my Zoom here.
No, don't worry about it. You know what
Okay.
I found really interesting? Yeah, I mean, it's, people are commenting just your, your honesty and openness, and just to hear your experience, as a family, and it's ongoing, right? And I
Oh.
think, a lot of people may ask, if they have a child who has some mental health challenges, it's like, where do you begin? Right. And I know from Bold, obviously, we would recommend that, obviously, through the school, speaking to your child, either the elementary, middle, or high school psychologist is always a great place to start when it comes to any concerns with mental health. And obviously, speaking to your pediatrician is instrumental also. But I know you have a lot of ideas and resources on that, Alexandra.
Well, to two of your points, this is a process, and for us anyway, there's no there's no finish line. Oh, we did it, we're done. It's an ongoing process, and we're always learning. And as a matter of fact, at 4:00 this afternoon, I was looking for an in-network psychologist for one of my kids. It's a kind of a process. It's an ongoing, there are ups and downs. And you deal with it, and then you move on. And that's just my perspective on it. As far as your question, have there been questions on where to go for help or how to find help? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, if you have, I have that situation with one of my kids right now, where they've asked, we went to see actually a talk at the Reformed Church. I don't know if anyone attended that before Christmas. It was sometime, I think, in December. Leah Olivia was there speaking, and Essie Cope from CNN was there. And when I left there with my child, he said, "Mom, I really feel like, I want to have my own therapist." And I felt that was huge, right? It was the first time he ever, mentioned that, said that. And all he said to me is, I want somebody young. And, and so then finding a therapist, as you said, is very difficult because first of all, it's, these things are expensive. And when you go through your health insurance, you realize that they really don't cover anything. And, you're looking at anywhere between 250, 300 and 400 up an hour for a therapist. So there are resources out there, but Alexandra, do you want to tell us the resources?
Sure. What I will do is, again, I'm not the best driver here. I would like to be able to share a screen. And I guess I'm going to share my cluttery desktop with you all. Here goes. Okay. Are you all seeing a website?
Yep.
Okay. So, this is, gosh, I'm going to have to move all of us over to the side so I can drive over here. I'm sorry. Here we go. Oh, there. Okay. Whew. This is a landing page of my site. And when I built this, I really wanted parents to have a place to go for some basic facts about the disorders that I've dealt with and places to go for help. So since we're discussing anxiety, we can go to the topics page and go to anxiety. And on this, you will see some information about it. And then I have links here, the National Institute of Mental Health, which will link you right to the anxiety page, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. These are basically the kind of be all end all of the data and facts that are here in this country. These are amazing sources. They're the authoritative sources for this type of information. Then as you scroll down, I have, and I don't know do you see yourselves on the right side of this? I can't.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Well, we can.
Oh, you're there in the way? I mean, can you see the
No,
screen?
no, we see your screen. We see your whole screen.
Okay, great. So here, there are a few different places for finding help. One is through the National Institute of Mental Health. Then there's the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And each one of these, when you go in, you can find, it says Child Adolescent Psychiatrist Finder. You just click on, I'm just going to say New York. And let's see what happens. Oh, these are the child and adolescent psychiatrists in New York. Okay, there are a few of them.
Great. And the other thing, Alexandra, you might just tell people, I know that there's a lot of studies and
yes,
they do ask, for volunteers.
The other thing is what I'm going to click out of this. Okay. And we're fortunate to be in a large metropolitan area because we also have here where it says clinical trials, US and global. If you click onto this, and it says find a study. You can either find all studies, but if you're looking for help for your child, you want to go to recruiting and not yet recruiting. And let's say anxiety, and let's come down here and just say youth. Country, okay, it's United States. State, city, we'll just say New York. and search. Here are a list of recruiting and not yet recruiting of 8 studies that are looking for youth participants. And here's trial treatment with sertraline in youth. There's, all, mobile cognitive behavioral therapy. They're all different types of studies. And here we are in an area and so close to all of these academic institutions that is a really good way to find help if either your insurance is not, does not cover anyone out of network, or the person you're looking for doesn't accept insurance, which is also common. It's a great way to get a highly discounted rate, but also really, cutting edge treatment. So that's something that can be helpful.
Fantastic. Alexandra, another question is just about medication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you can just talk about your experience. How do you feel? And parents are often slow to put their kids on medication, but obviously, you can have such great results also, and it has to be monitored closely. Can you talk about your experience with medication with your children?
Oh, absolutely. It is never, as a parent, I don't think medication is ever your first choice. But to be quite frank about it, I don't think my son would be here today if it weren't for medication. He would have hurt himself. And he also had a very difficult time with some bullying in high school. And also, again, that was important to have medication at that time. It can be a difficult choice, and depending on, there are so many different medications. And one in particular that we dealt with is really something that can have risky side effects. But that's why you are under a physician's care with those medications. And is it choice A? No. Would I be on medication choice A? Probably not. But you know what? If it means the difference between suffering and really thriving, then, that's what my feeling is. And I think it's important also to know that for the most part, medications aren't like magic. It will get your child to a place where they can start to, especially at young, I'm such a proponent of early intervention, because if you could get your child to start creating those pathways in the brain, for different behaviors, and they become automatic, you're really setting them up for a much better future. The earlier on there's intervention, the better. I think as a speech and language pathologist, you've probably seen it with young children. My son had a lisp when he was little. I don't think he had more than a month's worth of treatment and it was done. But had he gone and waited until high school, I think that would have been a much slower process. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I'm a speech language pathologist, and it's funny, I did an evaluation after work this evening. A parent had a concern about their young child who was 4 years old. And, people are very slow sometimes to act, because they always hope, as parents, we always hope for the best, that, they're a late talker, maybe they'll grow out of it. And suddenly you find that your child gets further and further behind. So I always have to remind parents, you do as parents, we do whatever it takes to make our child succeed in life. And, we only have one shot of it. And as parents, we can screw it up. But again, we can't be too hard on ourselves. And if we do screw it up, we have to do a reboot. And, all the help is out there today. And the school is such a great resource. And Bronxville, I know for ourselves as a family, has really supported us. But also we've had to get some support from outside. So it's a little bit of both. But I think it's very important as parents that we stay on top of things, that we communicate, with our IEP team. When you have your annual review meeting, or if you have issues between that you contact the school psychologist and say, this is the issue, can I meet with the team? It's very important to always be there and support your child along the way. And, don't take your eye off the ball. That's what I would say.
I think there's something, depending on the age of the child, but especially at the really young ages, in addition to a school psychologist, pediatrician, I found that teachers are a really great source to ask where your child fits in on the spectrum of things, because they have seen hundreds, thousands of children, and they can say, well, more on this side of this or that side of this. But, as a parent, it's helpful to know if they are way off on one of the sides, that you would like to take the next step. And that next step for us, and I think it's a wonderful amount of information, is to get a full neurological, psychological evaluation done by a neuropsychologist, because especially if there are behavior issues, or what are you dealing with? Is this child so anxious and frustrated because they can't understand something that's going on in class or communication or what have you? You don't really know. It's sometimes it's really the best way to start, I believe, is to get data on how does your child's brain work. And then you can start to parse through, or an expert, a child psychiatrist or psychologist can now start to parse through what is causing what. Because and then because treatment really depends. Do you want to treat the symptom, or do you want to treat the cause? And I think you can get there when you have the data.
Yeah, and I think, being under the watch of a neuropsychologist is important if you have a child who has mental health concerns, because if there is a crisis, it's hard, right? Then you're like, who helps me in a crisis? So, I always recommend, have your child evaluated by neuropsychologists. Whatever testing they need to do, let them do it. It's an investment, but it is worth it in the long run. And just knowing that you have them on speed dial if you ever need them in a moment of crisis, I think is invaluable.
And speaking of moment of crisis, depending on the ages of your child, I think it's important to have that talk if they're of a certain age. If you, and I have been in this position several times, if you are really concerned, or your child comes to you and they know they might hurt themselves, get help. Even if you have to call 911, there are a number of hotlines. And then actually, if you were to go to any of the resources that I give you, or National Institute of Mental Health, one of the first things it has is a hotline. And we can also send out hotlines. I just feel when it comes to safety, that is the line. And if you really, if you have a teen, don't leave them alone. Don't let them have access to something. Go spend, a day in the ER and then find out that, oh, it was just embarrassing, fine. But that's one thing that I think it's important for children to know. They can come to you and you will get them help, full stop. I think it's something that, better be safe than, again, say better be safe than sorry.
Great. Thank you, Alexandra. Does anyone have any comments or questions that they want to say at this stage? Or if you have any other recommendations for our next bold conversation, we would love to hear from you. So, Leah, anything else to add?
I was just going to say you could put those recommendations as well in the chat.
Oh, yes. And there's a question, any advice on sibling involvement? How much should they know and how can they help?
I think that's really personal. And it really depends on the age of your kids, because kids are kids. And if you share something that's deeply personal, and in a moment when they're really angry, I promise you it will come out. So that's something that you really have to judge on the, I would say the ages of your kids, where they are developmentally. And I don't feel you want to keep everyone in the dark. But I mean, if there's a lot of, let's say, drama going on in your home, it's not a secret, right? That everyone's dealing with something. But I think depending on the age, I think that's a hard one to gauge. And I think that really would depend on the ages of your kids and what the issue is that you're addressing. And
I
it's
also think there's, I'm going to add to that, I know we've talked to parents through BOLD that have used group therapy or family therapy or done workshops with DBT as a family, because it does affect the whole family dynamic. And as you were saying, Alexandra, it's not like if there are things going on in your household that it's invisible and no one's seeing it or feeling it or having it impact them. So I think another resource is to go to your psychiatrist or psychologist.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes. Doing, a family session or seeking the right resource or the right kind of therapy that would help with the whole dynamic for your family.
Yes, or find the profession. Yes, absolutely. Or, maybe there are certain things that a psychiatrist could say, well, this is the best way to explain it to this child. And this, this definitely.
Yeah.
And when things are happening in a family, it's not a secret. So I think that's a great point.
Thank you. This was fantastic.
Great. Thank you, Alexandra.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, you did a great presentation and it was so thorough. And it was just great to hear those studies. And it definitely is concerning. I think that 30-something percent.
33%.
Yeah,
and that was pre-pandemic. So in some way, I think it's really great that there's so much attention now put on an awareness put on youth mental health, but it's not new. So I having lived what I lived, I would say the crisis has really, is a not new crisis. And I think if there's one silver lining, if you would say, is that now that it doesn't have to be so quiet. People can start to become a little bit more comfortable talking about it and normalizing that. And I think that'll help people seek the help that they need.
Completely. And, even these sports stars coming out like Simone Biles and stuff like that, that your children might relate to, and, or Naomi Osaka. I
Mhm.
think, I just think it's great that these young people are coming forward and saying, you know what, I need to look after my own mental health. And, we also have to look at ourselves as parents and make sure that we look after ourselves in order to be there for our children. But those college statistics definitely are an eye opener to say, you know what, whatever concern you have with your child, let's try to address that before they go off to college, because they will definitely, you will see all the cracks once they start college, the challenges that they will have.
Well, actually, there are a couple huge concerns with that, right? And one of the with the purpose of the World Health Organization funding this study was that those kids are our future, number one. So, we're all going to be dependent upon the next generation and the generations that come after. That was one. Two is that the universities are not equipped. They cannot cater and serve the needs at that level. So I think, somehow, little by little, the attention will change things so that, everything can get on a better track.
Completely. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you again for having me, and for all of you out there for joining. I hope you found this helpful.
Great. And we're recording this. So Leah, hopefully, can we add this to our Bowl site? So if people want to watch it, so we'll make it available to everyone.
Yes, I think what I'm going to do is email it to all of you who have attended, because I know like the resources are on there, and you can, or if you know someone that might want to listen to it, you can forward it to somebody else, and then we will put it on our website as well, on the PTA website where the Bold page is. Okay, well, I'm going to stop recording, and we can say our goodbyes on the other side of the recording. Thank you again.
Okay.